And we are live. Evan, how we doing, man? It's a nice little magical Monday here. How you doing,
Magical
man?
Monday. I feel good. I feel really good. The heat index has been like over 100 here. I don't know if you watch the weather at all, but it's like the hottest part of the country. We're like hotter than Texas almost. It's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, right now, dude, I got the Apple kind of weather screenshot. My wife put it on her Facebook, and it was like for the next week, it's a low of 100 to 106 during the day. So pretty darn crazy, very hot. So we're inside. I'm actually gonna be jumping on the water today in like 2 hours
Good.
to do a little boat training thing. So I'm excited about that. This weekend was good. Didn't go on the boat this weekend, but I'll look forward to going on it this week.
Cool. Yeah, people have a misconception about Texas being like a desert, but Austin is there is humidity plus that 100 degrees. That's a scorcher.
Yeah, it's hot for sure. But again, most of the year it's great. That's my kind of Texas secret.
That's
Love
true.
it. I got a little workout this morning, got up, did some peak eight, sprints on my rower, some kettlebell, some push-ups, some rows, some good Swiss ball crunches and such. So I'm feeling good. I'm ready to go. How about yourself, man?
Yeah, I rode the mountain bike actually this morning. I'm trying to make it a morning ritual. Typically, I'm doing some good morning sunlight exposure, as much skin as I can, and kind of gazing in the direction of the sun. But then I thought, why not just add exercise on top of it? So I've been hitting the mountain bike, probably doing just a mile or two, nothing too intense. But my brain works so much better with morning exercise, morning light. So on the topic that we're chatting about today of chronic fatigue, that's one of the best strategies, I believe, is some type of morning exercise if you're not too fatigued and you're able to do even just a walking routine or stretching or morning yoga plus sunlight. That's like a 1-2 punch combo.
Yeah, I mean, I have a little home gym in my house, so I get up and I'm trying to do a little bit of 15 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes of exercise as soon as I get up. Closer to 30 is ideal. My wife tries to just get up. She's 8 months pregnant right now, so she just tries to get up and walk the dog for 30 minutes or so before it gets really hot. But yeah, exercise is really important. If you look at a lot of these higher level CEOs, right, they talk about exercise as really being a benefit on the cognitive side, right? Helps decompress stress, helps them just feel better, less anxious, make better decisions throughout the day. So exercise provides some awesome components, especially on the cognitive side. It's very cool.
Yeah, the problem is when we're talking about chronic fatigue, so many people they're so tired that they can't exercise. So it's really tough to give them that first little bump of energy. So maybe we'll chat
Yeah.
about that today. How do you actually get started with exercise when you've been sedentary for so long? It can be a struggle, but there are options.
Yeah, I mean, first things first is find your exercise tolerance. For the most part, many people can walk at least, right? They can at least do some walking,
Yeah.
gentle walking, or they can at least, let's say that's too much. They can probably at least do some gentle, like Tai Chi moves, right? So there's always a way that you can move a little bit, right? Whether it's walking or even on the Tai Chi side or even yoga side, right? So there's always some level of movement you can do. Ideally, pushing people to get onto the resistance training sides and to be ideal, and even the burst training side. If you're older and you're not used to that kind of compression in your joints, utilizing some kind of elliptical or rower or bike or something stationary where you're not getting the impact, but you can at least go out to all out intensity and then relax, all out intensity and relax. That's important for the mitochondria and for the muscles. And also doing some resistance training is going to be helpful because again, like things like walking, they aren't really going to build much muscle. I mean, you'll burn
Right.
fat. It's good to move, but you're not going to be putting on a lot of muscle walking. So you get the muscle building effects and you get the higher growth hormone effects with the resistance training and with the burst. So that's really important.
Now, did you cancel your gym membership? Do you still go over there now that you got the home gym set up, or do you just use the home as a complement?
I mean, I do both. I mean, the gym membership for me is like 19 bucks a month. So it's just nice to still have that because I can get out of the house maybe once or twice a week just to have a different change of scenery. As
Yeah.
you know, when you work from home, it's like you don't really get out much, right? You kind of
Right.
like you're stuck. So just an excuse to get out. But I still have the home gym, which is great. I got to start shooting some more videos from there on some of the exercise stuff. I think that's important. That's kind of fun too. So look for that coming soon. And then what else is on your mind? I mean, let's dive in if you're ready.
Yeah, yeah. So and you can use your wife as your videographer for your exercise
Yeah.
videos. People would love that on the channel, man. I don't think you've done any exercise videos yet, have you?
No, no, I haven't, but just simple stuff, right? Simple, kind of like the Paul Check mindset. Break it down into foundational movement patterns, right? Push, pull, push, pull, bend, lunge, squat, twist, walk, sprint, right? Those are like your seven kind of primal movements. And exercise you can think of, for the most part, you can fit into that type of 7 primal movement pattern. And then from there, you can, you can have it, you can do it with weights, you can do it with cables, you can do it with TRX, you can do it with Swiss balls and body weight, and you can implement and shift according to what you need. And also, if you're on a budget, I mean, TRX, a Swiss ball, some push-up bars, maybe a couple of dumbbells. I mean, you got like pretty much a full body facility for yourself.
Yeah, for probably less than $200.
Yeah, a couple $100, man, and you got a great gym.
So let's chat about chronic fatigue. I mean, what's your ancestral take on this? I mean, do you believe a chronic fatigue would have existed in ancient times?
Well, I think ancient time wise, I mean, look at the stress, right? Stress was punctuated. It was very short term, right? It was the tiger chased you, you either lived or you died, right? It wasn't this chronic thing where you got a mortgage, you got all these different things you have to do to to survive, so to speak. You had to get your food, you had to have your water, a shelter over yourself, you kill an animal, and then for the most part, you're resting and relaxing all day. Where today we have bills, mortgage, we have kids, and then look at today, right? Kids are kind of a liability today. I mean, look how much they cost to feed, schooling, college, where in those days, like kids were a massive asset. Like you wanted to have as many kids as possible so they could go hunt with you or help out around the house. I mean, it depends how far back you want to go, right? You want to go to farming days, right? My family were farmers like 100 years ago. So they had, everyone had 7, 8, 9, 10 kids, and they were all working on the farm every day. So they were a massive asset to the family. Today, kids are kind of a liability, right?
Yeah. I mean, you make a great point. You make a great, my great grandparents, there's an old picture. The average was like 16 kids.
Oh yeah. I mean, they were a massive asset. They helped the family out. Today, they're a stressor, right? There's no reason why you can't make your kid an asset and, give them some chores to do around the house and be a team player, right? But that takes energy and parenting to do that. So we gotta look at what we can do now to decrease stress, because after food needs were met, right? After food needs were met, from an anthropological perspective, food, shelter, hydration. I mean, you didn't really have much to worry about after that. We have a lot more we worry about in our life: traffic, everything, right? So looking at where we're at now, we know the adrenal glands play a vital role because they kind of are the interplay with our sympathetic nervous system. So we get that spider tingling sense, right? Stress levels go high. That's our sympathetic nervous system. And if we're always in fight or flight, then that's going to really play a game on our adrenal glands. If you look at Robert Sapolsky's book, he's the stress physiologist out of Stanford. It's Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And he just talks about how animals, I mean, it's like this zebra could literally be running from a lion, right? The lion jumps on its back, like takes a huge chunk out of its back out, but the zebra gets away, so to speak. And then you see the zebra an hour later, just grazing on some grass like nothing had happened. Right? Because it's this punctuated, even though half of its, backside's gone, it's like, okay, no big deal. Like it's this fight or flight response. It's either off or on, where we kind of sit into this micro off on all day long, from work stress, relationship stress, and then also food stress, right? I think food stress is probably one of the biggest stressors that keeps our fight or flight on. Just eating a lot of refined crap and sugar makes this blood sugar go up and down, up and down, up and down, which then puts a toll on the adrenals. And then also when you're stressed, you're actually burning up more nutrition, right? You're going through more B vitamins, you're going through more amino acids, you're going through more minerals, magnesium, those kind of things. But then when you're stressed, what also happens is you tend to crave more sugary sweet foods. So you see this kind of vicious cycle that happens: stress issues, more cortisol, more B vitamins, more magnesium, but also more cravings for the bad stuff, right? Alcohol, refined sugar. But then all those foods, they don't contain all of the nutrients that you're burning up at a higher level. So you see that little kind of vicious cycle you get into.
Oh yeah.
More stress, more nutrient issues, but then you crave the foods that actually contain none of what you need. And actually, to take those foods in, you actually create more deficiencies, because when you run those things through your glycolysis and through your Krebs cycle, it actually takes nutrients to metabolize those things. That's why alcoholics are so notorious for having B vitamin deficiencies, because of the fact it takes B vitamins to process the sugar of alcohol. So you can actually create more deficiencies by eating things that have zero nutrition in it, but you create even more than that, because you don't get it in, but then also you have to process that sugar with other nutrition that's not there, right?
Yeah, your gas tank's already gone empty, and you're trying to push the gas pedal even more. You made a great point about this, because many people, when they talk about stress, they say, "I'm not stressed. I don't feel stressed." It's like, well, you don't necessarily have to feel the stress, and you might not feel the stress. This could be all your nervous system. This is your gut. This is your pancreas you're talking about with the insulin surges. This is the liver stress, where you've got clogged up detox pathways. You're not actually replenishing your vitamin C, which every time we look at an organics, I know I see 9 out of every 10 people on the organics, their vitamin C is completely bottomed out.
Totally.
And for me, I think it's just the afterburners, on a jet fighter. You can't use the afterburners forever. You can turn them on, but it's not designed for permanent use. And that's kind of us in the modern world. And then also the workload too, it has increased, which, some people, maybe they can't change that. But I believe a lot of people, they'll tell me that they're going on a vacation, but they'll still bring the iPad or the tablet or the computer with them to continue working. And so even when we're paying for a vacation, we're still not letting that nervous system ever fully kind of hit the reset button. So you get back home and you still feel just as stressed, if not more stressed, because you left your home environment and you just worked the whole time. And then obviously there's the deeper issues that we'll get into today as well. So I'm going to start off, since you already hit on the diet piece. Let's just start off with talking about a vegan diet as a cause of fatigue, or specifically chronic fatigue. We've hit on vegan diet so much, and I believe maybe you could do it right. If you just tried extremely hard, you could survive. Could you ever thrive? I don't know. I don't know on a completely vegan, maybe vegetarian. We've hit on this. I won't beat the drum too hard, but ideally, if you're getting your good animal proteins that are pasture raised, you've got your digestion actually working, you're going to get a lot more minerals, trace nutrients. You're going to get your iron, which is going to help to prevent anemias, which is also on our list of causes of chronic fatigue. A lot of times vegans are going to show up on their blood work with different type of anemias. And then when you and I run blood work for thyroid, a lot of times we'll see thyroid issues too, like a elevated reverse T3, which is like the blank bullet for people listening. You've got your revolver, but you've got some blank bullets in there. Because you were on a vegan diet, the body thinks it's starving to death. So it says, well, Evan, I don't know when you're going to eat, so I might as well hold on to as much body fat as I can. This is why so many vegans, you'll see they're actually overweight. And it's like, wow, you're living on vegetables, but you're still overweight. What's going on? A lot of times this whole cascade, the adrenals, the thyroid, the fat storage, the malabsorption issues, all the beans and digestive problems that they're experiencing. This is like another vicious cycle that could be kind of similar to the standard American diet cycle you mentioned.
Totally. Now, when you look at vegans, right, the people that do best on a vegan or vegetarian diet are the ones that are going to be the least insulin resistant. So let me say it another way. People that are the most insulin sensitive, right? Their insulin levels, their insulin secretions are at a good place, right?
They do best.
They do the best, because typically vegans, vegetarians, they're going to be consuming carbohydrates at 300, 400 grams a day minimum, just because that's what it takes. If you're going to get the protein in and you're combining proteins with legumes and rice and other things like that, you're going to be getting a whole bunch of starch in. So your carbohydrates will be at anywhere between 60 to 70% per day on average if you are a vegan. Now, also, if you try to do it, if you're trying to keep the carbs down as a vegan, then you typically are going to be relying on a lot more protein powders. You'll be doing rice protein, hemp protein, pea protein, and you'll probably be having to add in a lot of good fats too, like, nuts, seeds, avocado, MCT oil, coconut oil, olive oil. So you'll have to really up the fats. And if you can handle the nuts and seeds, they'll also be really good. But then you'll also have to get a lot of the protein powders up, and you'll probably still need, as an insurance policy, a sublingual B12 to ensure that you're not getting anemic in any way. So that's kind of the big thing. And if you don't do it that way, if you don't do the protein powders, it's really hard. You got to get about 300 grams of carbohydrate as a minimum if you're going to do it that way. And if you have insulin resistance, or if you have any digestive issues, you're going to have to do a lot of legumes, and there's going to be a lot of lectins in there and a lot of potential mineral and protein disruptors there. That's why, Beano is such a popular supplement to break down beans, because a lot of those foods require a lot of enzymes to break it down and can be harder on your digestive system. Again, some people can do it. The question is, how do we differentiate? Why can some people do it? And a lot of it has to do with insulin resistance, right? The more insulin resistant you are, the better you're going to do with meat, because you can get a whole bunch of proteins and fats without the whole bunch of carbohydrates too. Right.
Yep.
And it's very nutrient dense. I mean, there's a lot of B vitamins in meat. If you look at the top B vitamin foods, they're going to be meats. And we just talked about B vitamins, how important they are for chronic fatigue. Fish, meats, pork, they're going to be really high in B vitamins. Also, nuts and seeds will be right behind there too. So that's kind of a good take home.
Let's chat about labs for a minute. I mean, I mentioned like some of the thyroid markers. What are you seeing on a piece of paper for people with chronic fatigue? How would we break this down? I hit like reverse T3, but what else is going to show up?
Yeah. So when we look at chronic fatigue, there's three things on the hormone mitochondria side we want to look at. We want to look at the adrenals. We want to look at the thyroid, both of those together, right? So making sure there's adequate T4 to T3 conversion on the thyroid side, and making sure your reverse T3 levels aren't going too high, number one. Looking at the adrenal side of the fence, so making sure cortisol is not too high or too low. And typically, you know, the more chronic the adrenal dysfunction is, the lower the DHEA sulfate will be as well. So making sure the adrenal component is good. Also the rhythm, right? That cortisol should be having a downward slope throughout the day. And a lot of people, they almost get kind of reversed as the adrenal dysfunction gets worse. And the problem with that is it tends to significantly mess up sleep patterns, right?
Yeah.
Sleep
So
tends to
let
go
me
really downhill.
let me restate that just so people understand what you're saying. So when you're talking about a reverse pattern, what we're going to see on your saliva test will be low, depressed morning levels, but then we'll see an elevated level of cortisol in the evening. So you're exhausted in the morning, but you're also wired and tired at night. So you can't sleep, yet you don't feel rested in the morning. We see that a lot, and we've done videos and podcasts on a specific topic, but a lot of times it's due to some type of stress, like an argument at dinner, or someone's doing blue light at night. You know, even just a tiny amount of blue light from your phones, your tablets, et cetera, can crank up cortisol. And you can fix it with the lifestyle strategy. And there's herbs you can use to lower evening cortisol, like Velora. We've chatted about that before.
Yeah.
And like the magnolia bark and some of that.
And I was just doing some of my supplementation right now. I was doing some adaptogenic herbs.
Yeah. What'd you take?
I just taken my Adrenal Revive, which has eleuthero, rhodiola, ginseng, ashwagandha combo. And then I was just taking some amino acids and some mitochondrial support just to make sure I am revved up and at maximum potential. And this morning I had 3 hard-boiled eggs. I had 2 pieces of bacon, and then I had some coffee with butter and MCT and 15 grams of collagen peptides. So that's kind of been my day so far. And then little workout action, so I'm feeling good. So just kind of reiterating what you said, we have the adrenals, we have the thyroid, we have the mitochondria component, and the mitochondria is the B vitamins. That's the CoQ10. That may be extra ribose. That may be extra carnitine. That may be some of your Krebs cycle intermediary compounds like fumarate and malate and succinate. So these are all really important things that can help the adrenals that I mentioned, the thyroid, and the mitochondria. So all 3 of those need to be looked at. So my analogy is, for energy, the adrenals are what shifts the gears. So if you're in from first gear to second gear, second to third, third to fourth, that's like a standard kind of transmission, right? You shift the gears, you go up as you go fourth to fifth gear. Now you're at highway speed, right? So as you shift the gears up, that's you generating energy so you can deal with and meet the stress, right? That's a faster speed. You downshift so you can relax and calm down and control your nervous system. Those are like adaptogenic herbs. That's like GABA. Here's some GABA right now. So I'm doing a little downshift action, if you will. So that's upshift and downshift. That's the adrenals. That is your body being able to meet the demands of stress and be able to come down from the demands of stress. That's adrenals. 2 is thyroid. That's your resting engine tone, right? You put that car in neutral. Let's say it's around 700 RPMs on a normal day. Maybe on a cold day, it's 1200 or 1400, right? Because the engine's really cold. It's got to generate more heat. So that resting engine tone, that's the thyroid. And think of the mitochondria as the gasoline and the lubricant that's in the car, right? It's the engine, it's the oil in the engine, it's the gasoline in the tank, it's the fluid in the car, whether it's wiper fluid or whatever else. It's the internal fluids that help that car to run. So thyroid is resting engine tone, right? And we know what happens if the engine tone's too low, the car stalls out too, right?
Exactly.
So if it goes too low, you stall out. That's like hypothyroid, right? You're stalling out because you're getting tired, you're getting fatigued, you're getting cold. So we go back. Number one is going to be your adrenals. That's being able to upregulate or downregulate stress. Number two is your thyroid. That's your resting metabolism, your resting engine tone, right? Too high, you burn up. Too low, you stall out. Number three is the fluids and the internal fuel in the car, right? The gasoline, the oil, all the fluids that help that car run. So that's kind of my analogy on the metabolic side of energy and chronic fatigue. We can go a little bit deeper in next.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. I love your analogies. I think there's been a few recent podcasts where I've not heard your analogies, so I'm glad that you're whipping those out. Let's chat about infections now. I mean, we hit on anemias, we hit on kind of the 3 body system approach to this whole thing. Let's talk about all the other factors. So we hit on blood sugar already, but let's talk about heavy metals, Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr. You know, some of these underlying infections that could be driving the adrenal, thyroid, detox problem issues, mitochondrial issues. A lot of times they go unaddressed. Now, there's some people out there that their whole business model is wrapped around like one piece of the puzzle, like methylation, which is a factor, but it's not
Lyme.
Or
it's
Lyme.
Only Lyme.
But it's just a factor, right? I mean, when Justin and I are working with people, we're never just saying, look, this is your one thing. There's never one thing that broke you, and there's not one thing that's going to fix you. It's always a combination of these factors. So if you've had a diagnosis of like Epstein-Barr or Lyme or mycoplasma or cytomegalovirus or these other infections or heavy metal, somebody says, oh, you're toxic with mercury or lead, you know, yes, those issues have to be addressed, but they're not going to be 95% of the problem. They're going to be a piece. Now, what percent of the pie? We don't know, right? Because it depends on, like Justin said, your diet. What kind of diet are you following? What's your stress load? How many hours are you working per week? How well are you sleeping? What's your EMF exposure? What's your exercise exposure? What's your light environment? Are you actually getting bright sunlight in the morning and you're candling down and you're not using artificial light in the evening, right? All these factors will pile on top of Lyme, heavy metals, Epstein-Barr, mono, etc., and that can make you or break you.
100%. And of course, the diet component has to be there because inflammation, one of the major factors of inflammation is going to be through your food, right? So making sure the food's dialed in. Again, that's anti-inflammatory, nutrient-dense, low toxin. Our approach is going to be kind of a paleo template that's macronutrient agnostic. So getting the protein, fat, and carbs right and dialed in for you, for your metabolism, and for what you can actually digest, because some people have a hard time with the whole food component because it involves digestion. And if that's not good, we have to make some modifications there. Now that dovetails into the next component, which is digestion, because if we have problems digesting food, that's where all the nutrients come into our body. So if we can't break that down, that's an issue. And not breaking down foods actually creates a stress in the body. So if we can't break down the foods, then the foods ferment, putrefy, and acidify in the gut and create more stress and more bloating. And then if we get really stressed, then we may have a hard time evacuating our bowels or moving our bowels, right? We may get more on the constipated side, and then we start having this auto intoxication phenomenon where we start reabsorbing a lot of the toxins that are in our stool, right? And that's not good either, right? We're literally drowning ourselves in our own toxins. So that component's there. And then we need the enzymes and hydrochloric acid, and we know that's important, and stress affects that, right? Because the more stressed we are, the more the sympathetic nervous system decreases enzymes and decreases acids. Also, infections, right? All of these things interplay because the more stressed we are, the more our digestion's poor, infections can come in, and infections amplify all of the things that we're talking about. And infections then create more leaky gut action, right? Where the tight junctions in the epithelial lining open up, and then more of those compounds in our gut get into our blood, and then our immune system interacts with them more, which then creates more immune stress. And your immune system is 70 to 80% in your gut. So the immune system always being activated really sucks up a lot of your energy. That's why when you get sick and you have like the flu or a cold, you're really tired. You're not tired because of the virus. You're tired because of the immune system allocating resources to kill the virus. So if your immune system's always upregulated, it will suck a lot of energy from you.
How about gluten as a simple immune stress?
That's why cutting gluten out can really improve people's energy, because number one, it's going to create gut inflammation if you're gluten sensitive, which a lot of people are. Number two, unless you're eating the best kinds of grains, there's still going to be a lot of Roundup and glyphosate and chemicals and lectins and gut irritants in there even if the gluten component is not a problem. So that may drive more leaky gut, which then creates this more immune reactivation, upregulation, which then starts to suck energy out, just like when you get sick from a cold. So that's why cutting those things out really decrease your immune cell activation.
Well said. I want to circle back to a couple things you mentioned about malabsorption, digestive problems. People may want to know, how do we quantify that? Well, you know, our philosophy is always test, don't guess. And so like when we're looking at a stool test for someone, we can look at secretory IgA, which is kind of that first line of defense against infections. Oftentimes we're going to see that real low. In terms of stools, obviously you can look at your stool. If it's floating, you know you're not digesting your fat. So if you're trying to implement a paleo or a ketogenic diet and your stools are floating, we know you're not digesting, but we can also measure it with steatocrit, a fecal fat marker, which is important because we can track this stuff. So people say, well, what's the value of testing? Can I just, you know, take all these supplements and do the diet? You can, but eventually you're going to spin your wheels because you've got to have the diagnostic data to figure out what's going on. I had a woman last week who her gluten antibodies were above 400, and she told me she hadn't eaten gluten in 4 years. And we know that the gluten antibodies can be elevated for 6 months, but not for 4 years. And so I told her, look, there's got to be some exposure. If you promise me the diet's clean. One lady I found had a chapstick she was using every day with wheat germ oil on her chapstick, and that was causing her antibodies to go up. But for this lady, you know, I'm thinking it's something with her skincare products. She said she loves wearing makeup. So I'm guessing she's got some gluten in her makeup somewhere. And that's a stressor too. So like, even if you're listening, like, you know what, Justin, Evan, I've heard you guys a million times about the diet. I've already got a gluten-free diet. If you don't test for your anti-gliadin and IgA antibodies, you'll never know, because these people that come to us and say they've been on a gluten-free diet for years, but they've still got issues like fatigue, boom, now we've got the lab to prove it and we can see why.
100%. 100%. So again, the gut component is really important. And we know there are certain infections that, you know, we're not going to go into the treatment because we can do a podcast on each one. Yeah. But we know things like H. pylori, blasto, of course, Lyme, which is Borrelia burgdorferi. We know the co-infections of Lyme like Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, right? These are different things. Mycoplasma. Mycoplasma is a big one with chronic fatigue. I think your wife had that at one point after a tick bite too, a few years back.
We never even saw a tick. Who knows? I'm guessing it was a tick, but yeah.
She had IgM levels for mycoplasma that were off the chart. So I remember we treated that and her joint pain went down and her energy came back.
That was scary. That was a scary time, I'll tell you. So infections, you know, I've got hands-on experience, you know, seeing my wife struggle like that with the infection piece, and she was definitely fatigued. A lot of times, maybe we should mention this, and sorry to interrupt you, but a lot of times with chronic fatigue, there's something else going on too, like depression, anxiety, insomnia, sleep issues.
Yeah.
It's not just chronic fatigue by itself, fibromyalgia. So usually it's not an isolated issue, I found, which means that more people should be listening, because even if fatigue doesn't apply, there could be other symptoms that are kind of complementary to this.
Yeah, fibromyalgia is intimately connected with chronic fatigue. Why? Because your systems to regulate inflammation are also connected to energy. So when your ability to generate energy goes down, your ability to resist inflammation or put the fire of inflammation out also goes down. So then you get very easily sore. You kind of have the central allodynia kind of thing where you're, you know, if I were to just touch someone who has no chronic fatigue or fibro like this, it's not a problem, right? But then their nervous system is perceiving that as like I'm punching them at full strength, right? So it's this hyper upregulation of the nervous system and also the inability to regulate inflammation. So the smallest things create a fire, if they will.
So it sounds like it's everything. It's not just a nervous system like you're mentioning, but you're saying it would be the immune system at play here too.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have the myalgic encephalomyelitis, which is the European term for chronic fatigue, right? So the myalgic encephalomyelitis is the other one. So we talked about the infections, right? H. pylori, Lyme, all the Lyme co-infections,
parasites,
Yersinia. These are going to be big. And again, the reason why they can be so big is because of the immune activation, number one. Number two, because of the leaky gut, which then exacerbates the immune activation. Number three, they impaired digestion, right? They impaired digestion, which means hydrochloric acid and enzymes drop. And then number four, it's going to affect the gut bacterial balance in the gut, right? More bad bacteria than good.
Yeah.
Right. Just like when there's sharks in the water, the sharks got all these little kind of things sticking to its underbelly that try to get a free ride, right?
Exactly.
So when there's parasites there, you get those kind of things that try to get a free ride as well, i.e. dysbiotic bacteria. And then these things are going to eat up more of your B vitamins and more of your nutrients. And we know that more beneficial flora actually produces nutrition. So then when you have that lack of beneficial flora, then you have lack of that input of really beneficial nutrients produced by them. And then also beneficial probiotics produce more healthy acids that keep the environment in the gut, let's say, inhospitable for the bad guys.
Yep. I'm glad you hit on the piece of them stealing your nutrients, and also the point about the dysbiotic flora is awesome. It's like your power plants. If you have a bad diet, but you've also got dysbiosis, I mean, I can't think of a better combination if you wanted to create chronic fatigue than to wipe out all the good guys. So also, maybe this is worth mentioning antibiotics too. I mean, we've seen people with chronic fatigue that it happened after a round of antibiotics, to the point where some people are almost wheelchair bound or bedridden due to massive rounds of antibiotics, especially someone, let's say they got a Lyme diagnosis, they start doing a bunch of antibiotics, then they're chronic fatigued due to everything going on. They've just destroyed themselves.
Exactly. 100%. And again, there is studies about bactericidal antibiotics induce mitochondrial dysfunction. All right. And I'll pull up a study here and we'll go through at least the conclusion part, and we'll put the references below. But I have a study here on mitochondria and antibiotics, and I have a study here on the mitochondrial dysfunction in heavy metals, because we know heavy metals are a really important component. We get exposed to them in our environment. It takes nutrients to detoxify from heavy metals. So if we have poor nutritional issues because we're not eating good foods or we're not digesting those foods, then all those amino acids and healthy sulfur-based minerals aren't going to be utilized for phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification as well.
Yep, well said. I'll also add in occupational exposure of heavy metals too. I was working last week with a female in her 70s, a retired dentist, and I said, "What's your exposure to mercury over your lifetime?" And she laughed and she said, "Oh, Evan, back in the 50s," she said, "I was putting mercury in my hands to show the kids all the things you can do with it." So who knows how toxic she is? We've not tested her quite yet, but I mean, dentist, what else would be toxic occupations, you would say? I would say anybody who's working on a ramp, like at an airport, people that are outside breathing in jet fuel all the time. We've got
potentially chemists, those people. I would say the big one, I think, is a lot of people that are doing a lot of lawn care work.
Yeah.
They're spraying a lot of pesticides or chemicals or glyphosate, right? It's a lot of potential things that they're getting exposed to. And a lot of times they aren't going through the proper precautions regarding exposure. They're just uneducated about it.
Right. And I think we hit on this, maybe not on this episode, but as we know, glyphosate damages mitochondria too. So you just brought up a study about antibiotics. We know glyphosate does the same. So if you're not eating an organic diet, I mean, it's going to be tough to get you out of this hole. What about 100%. Let's see. I mean, it's not too common anymore, but people who work in like a toll booth all day where there's cars, or a drive-through, people who work in, say Starbucks, you are working at the drive-through, you've got these cars pumping out exhaust fumes, you're breathing that stuff in all day. I think of all the guys at UPS that work out on the ramp, in the middle of the night when you've got these big planes just putting out tons and tons of jet fumes.
That's really tough. Yeah. And I know we see a lot, you run a lot of the GPL tox screens, and you see a lot of benzene and a lot of basically byproducts from gasoline metabolism, right?
Yeah. Yep. That, and also things from groundwater contamination too. So people that are drinking from well water, but they say, "Oh, I had it tested 20 years ago." It's like, well, fracking and a lot of other industries have destroyed a lot of our groundwater. So you've got to make sure that you're filtering your water too. If you don't have a good, clean water source, that could be another source of your fatigue.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of on the fence about fracking. I've seen some of the documentaries on it, but I also have family and friends that live in areas where they have to have water, basically trucked in, right? Because the water they have is so bad. But I've also heard from other people that these people, had lots of problems with their water even before fracking. So I'm kind of on the fence about that. But anytime we're putting toxins into the water supply and we don't have the ability to filter it out, that's always really a concern, for sure.
Yeah, so I guess maybe we're kind of all over the place, but we're really not, because we're building a complete picture of all these different sources. I mean, even fluoride, for example, if you're drinking fluoridated tap water, we know that that's going to block some of the thyroid function. So if you've got hypothyroidism or you've got autoimmune Hashimoto's, I mean, that could be a source too. So I use a fluoride filter to remove all that from my water, because here in Louisville, even though the water is great tasting, it's naturally filtered through our limestone, all of our caves here. It's still, they add fluoride at the very last step before they send it out to the taps, which hopefully there will be a day where that is not the case.
Yeah, and there's a study over in the UK where they looked at certain towns or sections of areas that have fluoridation and certain areas that don't, and they saw an increase in hypothyroidism in the areas where there was more fluoridation. So there's a correlation with more fluoride equaling more hypothyroidism, and that makes sense because fluoride's a halide, therefore it can pinch hit into that iodine receptor, which is really important for that iodination process of making thyroid hormone. So it makes sense why fluoride could affect that iodination process for sure.
Yeah, there was a China study too. I'm sure you saw this one about IQ being lower.
Yeah, it's like 7 to 10 points. I mean, this is why I've invested in 2 filters for my house. I have a whole house filter that's a carbon-based filter, and then I have one that is a reverse osmosis filter just for the countertop. So I have one that's whole house, which filters about 50 to 75% of the fluoride, and I have another one that's countertop. So that way the water like I'm drinking now is going to be 100% clean. Now, one of the fluorides we have, it actually adds back some of the good minerals, one of those filters. And they also have a trace mineral supplement that I leave right next to the water filter. So that I take a couple of drops of some minerals, or I have some really good sea salt that I just sprinkle in. That way I get the minerals back in too. I always tell people, like, I just, people are like, oh, it's going to take away your minerals. It's like, yeah, but would I rather have less minerals and just add them back in, or more toxins that I'm exposing myself to?
Exactly. I agree.
I can always just add some good minerals back in with a trace mineral support that costs like $5 or $10. Yeah. Versus get exposed to toxins over my whole life, which add up, right?
Yep. And or using your good Redmond salt or your real salt, your Celtic salts. I mean, you can replace minerals, I agree, much more easily than
you can take out toxins.
Yeah, totally. Like glyphosate. I mean, parts per billion is bioactive. So
yeah. So that's why I double filter it, just to be on the safe side.
I like that approach. So when you move, it won't be too difficult. Those are pretty easy systems to install and remove.
Yeah, I mean, typically, I think I had the plumber come in for $200. He installed both of them.
Nice.
Pretty simple. Yeah, awesome. Exactly. Now, I got a couple studies here I want to kind of dive in. There's one right here. It's by the Journal of Scientific Translational Medicine, 2013. It's called Bactericidal Antibiotics Induce Mitochondrial Dysfunction and Oxidative Damage in Mammalian Cells. Studies on mice, just so you know, it may not correlate 100%, but it just gives you some good kind of ideas of why we're, trying to only use antibiotics for like last case scenarios. But it says that, this is in the abstract, we demonstrate that these bactericidal antibiotics induce effects that lead to oxidative damage to DNA, to proteins, and to the cell membranes. Mice treated with bactericidal antibiotics exhibited elevated oxidative stress, markers in the blood, oxidative tissue damage, and upregulated expression of key genes involved in antioxidant defense mechanisms, which point to the potential physiological relevance of these antibiotic effects. Now, here's the interesting thing. What they're saying is more oxidative damage. What's oxidation? Oxidation's when you lose an electron, okay? What does that mean in real life? Cut an apple in half. Watch it start turning brown in front of you. That's oxidation. Leave a nail out in the rain. It comes back rusty. That's oxidation. So what happens in your body is you have oxidation at the tissue and cellular level. Now that causes more antioxidants, right, which give off an electron to help prevent that tissue from oxidizing or essentially going bad. So it takes a lot of nutrients out of that reserve to prevent this oxidation from happening.
Wow. And now I also heard something about the gene.
Hold that thought 1 second. I want to just dovetail this with the last sentence because there's a lot of stuff here. I don't want to lose track. Give me 1 sec. So now it says, the deleterious effects of bactericidal antibiotics were alleviated in the cell culture of mice when they administered antioxidants of N-acetylcysteine, which prevented the preferential bacteriostatic antibiotic deleterious effects. So by giving that extra antioxidants and sulfur amino acids, it actually neutralized the negative effects that happen. Sorry about that, Evan. All yours.
You're good. Well, you mentioned the word genetic too. You said in that abstract there that some genes were either turned on or turned off that help to bring on antioxidants. So that's crazy too. You're actually affecting things at a genetic level with antibiotics.
Exactly. Any other comments on that though?
Well,
About the nutrients kind of helping to alleviate some of that?
well, so I wonder, is that going to turn on or reverse whatever happened to the gene as well? You think it will?
Well, I mean, we're talking about epigenetics. So I
Yeah.
imagine, yeah, it's going to have an epigenetic effect for sure.
Cool. That's
Everything
neat.
we do has an epigenetic effect. I mean, just sitting down and meditating for a few minutes will have an effect on your epigenome. The question is, do you do it enough so that switch kind of stays on, or is it just a
Yeah.
temporary, flicker, if you will?
Yep. Exactly.
Now, one more study I want to get your take on as well. Now, this is talking about heavy metals, in particularly mercury. But when we look at heavy metals, we're kind of talking about mercury, lead, arsenic, cadmium, and aluminum. Those are the big ones for the most part. But in this study, they talk about mercury and how it can accumulate in the central nervous system. It can impair physiological functions by disrupting your endocrine glands. What do you think it's talking about there? Probably thyroid, probably adrenal, probably the HPATG axis. They talk about the most important mechanism by which mercury causes toxicity appears to be mitochondrial damage via the depletion of glutathione, coupled with binding to thiol groups, which generate free radicals. Mercury has a high affinity to thiol, so that means you're increasing free radicals. It's also binding up, has a high affinity to selenium as well. These are present in the amino acids cysteine and acetylcysteine. Again, we just talked about those in the last study too, so keep that in mind. Lipoic acids, proteins, enzymes, NAC, which are all precursors to glutathione, which is among the most powerful intercellular antioxidants, right? Those help bind up and prevent the loss of electron. When you think antioxidant, think anti-electron loss, okay? Keep on going down the list here. So which among are the most powerful anticellular antioxidants available to protect against oxidative stress and DNA peroxidation, right? That's basically the DNA basically kind of going bad, if you will, right? When you have peroxidation, it's like fats going bad. You heat the fats up too much, you get all these peroxides, it goes bad. The contents of these metallothioneins, glutathione, selenium, and fish in high omega-3 fatty acids appear to strongly related to the degree at which organic mercury and the protective detoxifying mechanisms in humans. In conclusion, depletion of glutathione mitochondria increase lipid peroxidation and increase oxidative damage of proteins and DNA in the brain. So let's break that down. What did that say? It says increased mercury is going to cause more peroxidation, oxidation, right? That all just means damage. Think about that as damage. It's going to deplete a lot of those nutrients that help make glutathione your master antioxidant, which include your sulfur amino acids, cysteine, glutamine, glycine, alpha lipoic acid. But it talks also about more of those nutrients, fish oil, glutathione, cysteine, selenium can also help too, though. Again, you'd probably have to do it in a supplement form to get enough of a therapeutic level there.
Cool. That's awesome. I've got one study too to add to this pile.
Great.
It was from American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and I've seen this actually on a piece of paper on organic acid, so I can confirm that this is accurate because I see it time and time again. Vitamin C elevates red blood cell glutathione levels in healthy adults. All it took, they had, of course, placebo, and then they had 500 milligram daily dose of vitamin C, and then they had 2,000 milligram daily dose vitamin C for 4 to 5 weeks, and that was enough to elevate glutathione levels by, let's see, well, it ranged in the subjects. For some humans, they had 8% more glutathione. Some had 84% more glutathione just in 4 to 5 weeks of supplementing with vitamin C. And I've had people taking liposomal, like glutathione or reduced glutathione. They're still depleted on the organic acids, and then I'll give them vitamin C, and then the glutathione goes up better. So I almost don't even push people into glutathione supplements because time and time again, I see that their levels are still depleted. I'm like, well, look, you could just supplement with vitamin C and replenish it just as good, if not better. And it's going to be significantly cheaper in the long run too, because vitamin C is pennies on the dollar compared to glutathione.
How much vitamin C are you giving?
I usually do about 2,500 milligrams personally. I do about a teaspoon a day.
About 3 grams a day or so.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, I typically only do glutathione for people that are having more chronic more chronic detoxification issues. But I think doing vitamin C with it's always a good thing because that's always going to help the adrenals too.
Right. And it's so cheap too. Like liposomal glutathione, you could spend what, probably $100 a month if you wanted to on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit cheaper than that. I know Chris Shade and his liposomal, you do maybe 2 to 4, maybe 4 to 8 pumps a day. So it's probably 60 or so. But yeah, it's definitely a little more pricey, but it just depends, right? On what's going on and how sick the person is. The average person probably will do better with vitamin C. But again, more toxicity, glutathione may be something to add with the vitamin C.
Good. Well said.
Well, anything you wanted to add, Evan? I think we hit a lot of stuff. We put some research out. And again, that study by me that I just talked about was in the Review of Environmental Contaminants and Toxicology 2014 called Mercury Toxicity and Neurodegenerative Effects. We'll put the references to these studies in the reference section on our video. So we'll put it in there. You'll see it there.
Good. Yeah, I just sent you the study I was talking about too, in case people want to read through. I think we hit a lot. We should probably wrap it up. I mean, we could
wrap it up.
We could go for hours on this subject, and so we've hit on chronic fatigue, but not maybe in this much detail. So, wrapping up, 3-body system approach. It's going to cover so much: adrenals, thyroid, gut, detox function, mitochondrial. Get all those systems evaluated. If you've not worked with a functional medicine practitioner before, you can guess and check. Sure, you can take random supplements we mentioned, but your results will be limited. Get the testing done. Even if you just get the testing done and then you want to go on your own journey to figure out what it says afterwards, go for it. But to me, the data has changed my life. I know it's changed your life. It's changed thousands and thousands of our clients and patients' lives. So for me, I like testing. I like to see the piece of paper. I like to see the needle move. Somebody says they feel better. We look back at organics. Oh my God, look, their Krebs cycle is actually working now. That's cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Again, up to 100%. Is there any quick questions you wanted to answer by the listeners, or do you feel like we hit a lot of them just in our riffing here?
I can pull it up. Do you want to read a couple off? I didn't have the question list in front of me.
Yeah. So a couple things here from Sam. Do you recommend a water softener with a reverse osmosis under the sink or a whole house filtration for home? Again, I would do both if you can, just because of the convenience of having, because like at night before I go to bed, I'll grab a quick glass of water upstairs, even though it's not from my reverse osmosis as well. But it's still really, really good. But 80 to 90% of my water is coming from my countertop unit, so I don't feel that bad. Plus, it's nice having not having to buy shower filters for all the showers in the house. And if you have guests, they can just kind of drink water out of their faucet upstairs. So I like the whole house. And I like the countertop, and really when you factor it, it ends up being like maybe $150 a year, $100 a year. And if you factor what you pay on bottles of water, I mean, you're paying that in probably every 3 to 4 months, easy.
Yep, I would do the softener. So I used to live in Las Vegas. The water there is super hard. Even with a shower filter, you could see calcium buildup, and a lot of people, even my mom had kidney stones from the water out there. So for her, a water softener is a game changer. I don't know. I don't know if it's all the West Coast, if it's just Nevada, Utah, other states, but man, the water's hard out there.
Yeah, it would totally depend, I think, on where your area is. So I would more than likely just talk to the company that you're going to go with, because they probably have experience dealing with the whole country as a whole. So they'll know what areas that you probably need the water softener. And if your water is very hard, then I would invest with the water softener component. I don't have one, but if I needed one, there's an attachment that you could put on that would soften the water as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then regarding infections, they can cause chronic fatigue in themselves because they can create a lot of toxins that can clog up that mitochondria. So SIBO and infections can add to chronic fatigue just from the toxins like yeast and the acetaldehyde that comes off the yeast that can slow down the mitochondria too and create fatigue as well.
Yeah, I was fatigued when I had 2 parasites. I was definitely fatigued, and now my energy is much, much better.
Yeah. And there's a lot of mechanisms, right? Because is it because it's affecting digestion? Is it because it's affecting the immune system, which is sucking up energy? Is it because of the biotoxins that are affecting the mitochondria? So like a lot of times, like we don't know exactly like how much is causing what, but we just know generally that this tends to cause it. And here are the kind of mechanisms outlined that we know which it can plug in and interplay and have a negative effect, but we're not going to know exactly what percentage. But again, in the end, does it matter if you get better?
Right. No, it doesn't. Jack, he asked, is AA a good source for vitamin C? I don't know what he's talking about. Do you, Justin?
AA. Man.
Ascorbic acid, I'm
Ascorbic
guessing.
acid. Yeah, that's got to be what he's talking about. I mean, again, if you do ascorbic acid, I like to have some of the bioflavonoids, the rutin, the hesperidin, those kind of things with it. Now, I like the buffered form of ascorbic acid as well, with like the ester kind of in there and like some of the potassium, vitamin C salts in there. So yeah, I think it's good, but get some of the bioflavonoids in there with it.
Yeah, and I'm if you want the optimal, if you're listening to us, you want to be the top 1% of health. I like the mixed ascorbates where you can do like the magnesium and calcium ascorbates mixed with ascorbic acid. So you've got kind of like a trifecta of ascorbates. That tends to work better. Ascorbic acid is the cheapest though. So if you're on a budget looking to get vitamin C, yeah, that may cut it.
Yeah, I like a good buffered vitamin C as well. But yeah, I think that's still really good. Just try to choose a really good quality brand as well, GMO free. All that's great. And I think we kind of hit a lot of the other questions. I mean, a lot of people have other questions that may be off topic. I don't want to go too far off topic. But of course, if we didn't highlight enough, diet, lifestyle, sleep are going to be foundational things. And if you're not sleeping, we probably have to fix a lot of the hormone stuff, like the cortisol rhythm component that will then help the sleep too.
Yep. You're welcome, Jack. Thanks for asking a question. If you guys have more questions, you can always email us. Contact Justin through his site, justinhealth.com. Contact me through my site, evanbrand.com. We always love questions and we love topic ideas too. So if you guys have something that we haven't covered that we need to, we're happy to dive in. So definitely you could reach out to us at any time for questions, and then for consults too. Justin's available, and you go to his site, justinhealth.com, book a call. We both work with people around the world. So wherever you're listening, it doesn't matter. We can get lab tests across the entire ocean to Europe, Australia, New Zealand. Doesn't matter. And then the good old United States, we work with thousands of people here. So reach out, justinhealth.com, evanbrand.com, and make sure to hit the thumbs up button on this video if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, if you're liking it right now, guys, give us some love. We'll come back and we'll do more of these videos. So give me some hearts or some thumbs up and a couple of shares and likes. We appreciate it. It energizes us and it makes us want to come back more frequently and drop more knowledge bombs.
Take care.
Awesome, Evan. Have a good one, man.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.